Stop hitting yourself. Take what? Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
Hi everyone, welcome to Priority Holder, and today we'll be playing Campaigns Part 2 in the Timeless format. So Campaigns is a deck I designed that's centered around the cards Disinformation Campaign and Intimidation Campaign, each of which are blue-black enchantments for 3 mana that enter the battlefield, draw you a card, and punish the opponent somehow, either draining or making them discard. And they each have a means of returning back to your hand from the battlefield. So they represent powerful yet extremely slow late game engine cards. And so I figured a good way to sort of take care of the early game is with pitch cards such as Grief and Subtlety. So you can use these to keep up with your opponents in the early game and then take over and grind them out in the late game with these cards. And so another thing is like these pitch really well to like Chrome Mox. They can return to your hand in the late game. You can feed them to Psychic Frog. So there's like a lot of cool things you can do. And so it's sort of like a slower scam shell. It also very naturally fits a Chalice of the Void setup where we're not running that many 1 mana spells. Though we do have outs for scamming things with Malakir Rebirth. So let's jump into some games. Alright, so this is a pretty nice hand. Have a turn 1 Chalice locked up. Could potentially scam a Grief turn 1 depending on what we draw. So we have to see if the opponent messes with our plan at all. You know, Thoughtseize could turn everything we're planning on its head. So, right, it is a blue-black land into Hydroponics Architect. So that's an alchemy card. It's a flyer that whenever it hits a player, it gives a random land in their deck, the island type, and ETB draw a card. You know, so really strong with fetches. You can fetch up ETB draw a card lands. You know, so don't love to see that, except for the fact that it indicates Chalice is probably pretty good against them. So we're gonna turn 1 Chalice instead of griefing them. Usually these decks are pretty lean, and we know they have at least some number of 1-drops, you know, so we'll see if we can strand some cards in their hand. And they pass without playing anything, so they must have kept like a Ponder or a Brainstorm, and then we locked them out with Chalice. Like, I'm guessing that's what had to have happened right there. They kept the 1-lander off the strength of their lean spells, you know, but we totally denied them. So land number 3, Disinformation Campaign. Let's see what we can draw. And so this is a slight non-bow with the deck, you know, so ideally we're locking stuff out with Chalice, but then when we make them discard Disinformation Campaign, they have useless stuff to discard. So in this case they discarded a Ponder, which is dead under Chalice, and does show that they were probably leaning on that. Now this is unfortunate. They drew the exact 1 land in their deck that was ETB draw a card. So not to mention, they now gave that ability to another land in their deck. So they'll be able to keep chaining card draw. So don't love that. Do like getting land for. So I'm a little worried about just feeding a hard cast Grief into a mana drain. So I decided just to toss out a Psychic Frog just to test the waters. Like if you get a Grief mana drained and it feeds to like a Treasure Cruise or something, it could get really ugly. So decided to go Psychic Frog, Polluted Delta, because Delta, if we get a Surveil land, can put Disinformation Campaign back into hand. So they're going to crack their fetch and grab the next land that was granted ETB draw card. So, and here comes Bowmasters, which is very strong against us. Like each of our campaigns draw cards, and Psychic Frog when it hits draw cards, you know, so we don't have a ton of like onboard interaction. We have 4 Bowmasters, so that's what we're gonna have to find to deal with their Bowmasters. Alright, so Hydroponic Architect crashes in. Theoretically, we could pitch our whole hand to Psychic Frog, jump into the air to, block their creature. It seems insanely costly though. Now one trick to remember, so we're loaded up with more Surveils than normal in this deck because of the Disinformation Campaigns. So you could, at instant speed, jump a bunch of campaigns into your hand to feed to your Psychic Frog to grow it unexpectedly. You can do the similar trick with Intimidation Campaign by like Bowmasters, using Bowmasters on something, So that's something to remember, that you can adjust the number of cards in hand. Same thing if you like need to load up for a Commandeer or something like that, or a Subtlety. So skipping the other campaign because we want like to find Bowmasters right now. So I'm gonna crash them with Psychic Frog and just see how they respond to it. They respond with another Bowmaster, so thank goodness we drew Subtlety, otherwise things would have gotten really ugly right now. So we're going to just hard cast a Subtlety and force them to make a decision whether they want to redraw that Bowmasters. So let's see what the opponent opts to do. So they do put it on top, and by letting Frog hit them, they get a free Bowmasters trigger. And we finally found our own copy of Bowmasters with this, which is excellent. So they're just going upstairs with the Bowmasters, grows the Orc army. Think about what land to play. Going to play Malakir Rebirth tap, because if we do that, we have guaranteed 6 untap mana next turn for like Hardcast Grief plus Bowmasters off that beautiful Mirage Island we have. So, all right. So this, I don't know, this might have been a mistake from the opponent. So they opted to keep the Bowmasters, but then they shuffled it away. I don't know if they got too ambitious there, or maybe they changed their mind. So it's hard to say, but if you keep the Bowmasters on top, seems like you want to not shuffle it away. So all right, so they're crashing with that. I'm not going to call their bluff. Like, if they have a Bowmasters, this would be absolutely horrible for us. So I'm just going to tank the hit from that and see what they have. All right, so they play their own Psychic Frog. Now, this is another situation where Chalice can backfire. Like, they can just feed all their dead cards into Psychic Frog now. So what I decided to do is try and see if we can... Now, the thing is that the attack was either like an incredible, last turn, was an incredible bluff by them, or they have a Bowmasters. So, gonna hardcast a Grief right here, and discover a hand with all 1-drops and a Bowmaster. So you can see Chalice is working overtime right now. Their entire hand is shut down, except for now the fact that it can be fed into their Psychic Frog. So, that is a little bit tough. So the opponent's gonna hold on to all that stuff. We are at least holding off the Architect now, but Psychic Frog, like, they can pour so many cards into it that we wouldn't really be able to keep up. Like, sure, we can pour some resources into our own Frog, but it's going to get ugly. So, alright, so they are going to give their Frog flying to reduce our block options. And going to just Bowmasters them here. So, we're going to let the Frog hit us, and then try and get some extra Bowmasters triggers. So this is a mistake by me right here. Like, if you could see me like frantically toggling on full control because I realized I didn't get Bowmasters in play in time. Thankfully, we're bailed out with another priority pass by the opponent activating Psychic Frog. So I got a little too risky with getting the Bowmasters into play. So I did get a second chance, but that was like a near, like, really annoying mistake right there to miss out on Bowmasters trigger, you know. So first order business to shoot down their Bowmasters. We could use like the extra trigger off the frog draw, like use both triggers to take down the Architect, but Bowmasters is like a big problem for us. So, all right, so they didn't fully power up their Psychic Frog. They left some 1-drops in hand, but we go, we ding them for some damage, and we have like a ton of attackers in play now. But they did manage to find another Psychic Frog, which makes sense why you'd hold on to some cards. Alright, Sink into Stupor is excellent. So, it feels like we're on the cusp of something right here, but it's a little bit tough. So I was about to slam Intimidation Campaign, then I'm like, wait a second. Like, I might be able to trigger like a discard cascade by slamming Disinformation Campaign right here, because they might feel like, okay, well, instead of discarding to that, I could feed the Psychic Frog, right? So, after thinking about it, I'm like, you know what, yeah, let's make them discard and see what they do, because we could set up a huge trap right now at Sink into Stupor. Alright, so they pitch Tamiyo into their second Frog, pitch a Brainstorm, pitch Fatal Push, and it's this point I'm like, alright, one more card, come on, pitch it, and they discard a Tamiyo. So now we can absolutely whammy them. We can bounce one of their Frogs with Sink into Stupor, and they're still going to get hammered by the ETB of Disinformation Campaign. So they're going to lose the Frog no matter what. Now, they can just feed that Frog into their other Frog, but now, yeah, they're in big trouble at that point. So on to the next game. That was a really awesome win against the blue-black mirror. Another Chalice hand is especially potent against a Lurrus deck. So I see another copy of Chalice. Now, the thing is, like, if they Inquisition our Chalice away, we'll be super glad we kept it on top. So I'm keeping on top, even though, like, if it doesn't get discarded, it's going to be redundant pretty soon. Alright, so turn 1, Guide of Souls. Going to just slam Chalice for 1. And then, after thinking about it, yeah, just pass the turn. There is an argument for Chalicing for 0 to lock out Mishra's Bauble against a Lurrus deck, so you have to keep that in mind. Though that would lock out any future Chrome Moxes on our side. Alright, Guide of Souls crashes in. And keeping a Chalice and Toxic Deluge hand against energy, like what appears to be an energy deck is like makes you feel super safe at the moment. So like not really scared about what they're doing because we have like such an efficient cleanup right here. All right, so Disinformation Campaign, we see what they pitch, and they're gonna pitch a 1-mana spell. So you could see like, you know, Disinformation Campaign loses its potency under Chalice of the Void, you know, so that's something to pay attention to. I haven't quite like solved how to fix it, but Chalice does seem like it makes a lot of sense in this deck anyway. So after thinking about it, I'm like, you know what, like I don't want them to like get any Mishra's Bauble value, so I decide just to slam Chalice for 0 and ultimately do that. So alright, and the opponent cracks their fetch. Please malicious advice, the like button if you'd like to see an unorthodox mid-range deck such as this one. Alright, so they're putting Lurrus in the hand, so they must have like all 1-drops. Like otherwise, they'd be slamming like a Johnny or Amped Raptor or, you know, something like that. So the fact that they have nothing better to do. Now I think I got a little too excited right here. Like I should have just slammed Grief, stripped the Lurrus from their hand, and then kept Subtlety for the future. Instead, I was hoping yeah, I don't know what I was doing. I guess I was excited about Subtlety, but I think just griefing it out of their hand is just way better. So going to crack the fetch and just Subtlety the Lurrus right here. I guess, I don't know, maybe my rationale was I wanted to keep having them play into and like really blow them out with the Toxic Deluge. Maybe that was the rationale. So gonna just hardcast a Grief right here and see what we're working with. And it turns out the opponent has mono 1-drops, which are all locked out right now. So it all, like, unless they have some like crazy, like they can't have Witch Enchanter because they're a Lurrus deck, you know. So unless they have some crazy way we're not expecting to blow up an artifact, it doesn't really matter what we take. So I'm gonna take the Static Prison though. Now here comes Lurrus. Now you can see, had we just griefed the Lurrus out of their hand, they might have just prompted a concession right then and there, you know. So so now what do we do? So I was thinking about it, like their hand is useless. They have 2 cards in play. You know, we could just keep playing stuff and like just try and overpower them with like our pitch elementals, you know, just being hard cast. I decide like probably just going to Toxic Deluge right here, and that might just prompt a concession. So attack with both of them and going to just X equals 2 Deluge. And the reason, like, it leaves a Subtlety behind for us, which is still like, not to mention we have like 2 more creatures and their hand currently is like complete garbage. So I'm gonna Deluge for 2 and see if they can recover from that. And as soon as we untap, it's gonna be like real tough for them. Alright, so they're just feeding stuff into Chalice just to sort of show us look what I still had. So we see Ocelot Pride, Ragavan, and this is why you play Chalice. Like this, reason I'm not fast forwarding through this is because this is why you play Chalice, for like moments like this to warm your cold heart, you know. So on to the next game with a smile on our face. Surveil land, no early plays, you know, that is the risk, you know, when you're running like Chalice X equals 1, not that many 1-drops, you know, you run the risk of sort of slow starts. But that's why the pitch elementals are there to like speed you up a bit. Alright, so there's a Chrome Mox, and they tuck an Exploration under it, and there's an Ancient Tomb into Spelunking, and all of a sudden, like, oh boy, the opponent is just going off with their mana sources right now. So we'll have to see how much worse it can get for us. Forest into Exploration and another fetch land. So no big deal, just, you know, 5 mana on turn 1. So what do we do now? We could slam a Psychic Frog. We could hold up Bowmasters. Like I decided holding up Bowmasters seems better in this situation. If they slam like another Spelunking, we can like get them, you know. So we'll have to see. All right. So the opponent surveils and gets rid of another Exploration. So I've thought about making a deck like this before, like all in on like tutoring up strip mines and stuff like that. Haven't quite found the right build for it. So let me know if you're interested in like something like that. It's like, you know, crop rotations, explorations, ice tills, the works, you know, all in on strip mine. So opponent's getting a little flooded, and that's the nature of these sort of lands decks though. So I'm gonna hit them with the Orcish Bowmasters. The thing I'm worried about against this deck is like a Primeval Titan, you know. We have some defense with the Subtlety. That's only gonna buy us some time, you know. So going to crash in. Now the thing is, they took some Ancient Tomb damage. They have fetch lands and stuff, so like they are chipping in some damage on their own. Now, as I play this tap land right here, I want to make sure I have mana for Subtlety next turn. So tap land it is right now into Psychic Frog. I'll go ahead and link a Strip Mine deck of my own that I built for the intent of locking people out of the game. So opponent's going to Surveil again. They have tons of Surveils to go with their fetches. Alright, they liked what they found. So they found an Ice Till Explorer, which is a big problem considering they have multiple fetches and stuff like that. So I'm going to pitch cast Subtlety. As painful as it is, buying us a turn right here is massive because our 3 attackers are going to get in, and we're going to have untapped Subtlety mana next turn. Meaning, like, hard cast Subtlety, I should say. Now, thank goodness we did. They had a Field of the Dead in hand, so they would have like completely walled off like all of our attackers had that Ice Till resolved. So that was like a super clutch Subtlety moment right there. So we're going to crash in. And feeling amazing right here, knowing that they're going to draw Ice Till, they're going to cast it, and we're going to give them the exact same situation with the Subtlety. So, like, this is why Memory Lapse / Subtlety is like such a devastating card. It's just forcing opponents into like Groundhog's Day situations. Like, oh, do you want to draw this card again? You want to draw it again? You know, the opponent has seen enough at that point. So on to the next one. Love this Chalice / Deluge hand. It's going to be good against like a creature mid-range deck. Much less good against a combo deck. In fact, unless we can slam the early Chalice, we're in big trouble. Turns out we're in trouble anyway because Allosaurus Shepherd indicates an Elves deck. Not only that, but it grants all their green creatures uncounterable. So they can just play all their Land and Roll Elves right through our Chalice. So don't love that. And then we have a Disinformation Campaign on top, and decided to keep that just to like attack their hand. So going to Chalice X = 1 for good measure. Like, I don't know what other like 1-drops they might be playing that aren't green creatures, you know, but just decide to put it out there. And they have Cavern, so they're pretty well covered from our Chalices. So we have to see how bad this gets. All right, so Leaf Crown Visionary is going to pump up the Shepherd, and it's going to crash in. All right, Bowmasters is right on time. So do we just Bowmasters their Lord right now, or do we try and get a bonus trigger, like if they play some Elves and try and draw off, you know, using Leaf Crown Visionary's ability? So decide to try and snipe like a bonus draw. Now, the thing is, I don't know if there's a window. Like, I think you have to get Bowmasters into play by the time, like, you know, we have to put it into play now, and they can just opt out of paying, you know. So like, it's not guaranteed to get them. But decide now is as good a time as any. So I'm going to shoot the Visionary and see if they draw into it. And they draw right into the face of Bowmasters. So it allows us to pop the Shepherd also. So feel really good about that exchange right there. So now we're going to crash in with the Orc army. Maybe we should lift on deep. I guess they have so many lords. Like, there's a good chance it's going to outgrow the Orc army. So I'm just going to crash in, use Disinformation Campaign, trying to set up some mana for Subtlety. And it was feeling like really good. And then I see them pitch Natural Order, and that makes me spooked all of a sudden. Like, oh snap! Like, that is a big problem. You can see me hesitating right here because I'm like, oh snap! Like, maybe it's just there for Crater Hoof, which does nothing right now. But they probably have like a spare, like a Traxa or something really like good in the mid-range game, you know. So you could see me like thinking about playing this land, but then like I might need to just pitch cast a Grief right now. If they can just slam land Natural Order, like we might just lose to an Atraxa. So, and the thing is, I don't want to pitch cast a Toxic Deluge against Elves. Like, we definitely want that. So despite it being like super resource intensive, I decide, you know what, I am going to just pitch cast a Grief right here, and it's going to have to be Malakir Rebirth going into it. As much as it sucks to not hit land 4 for like Subtlety down the line. So gonna Grief them right here just because I'm really scared about a backup Natural Order. And I'm still pretty dang glad I did, because taking away a Coco from them is like almost as good as taking away a Natural Order in that situation. So alright, there's another War Master. Now this is actually bad. Double War Master with another Elf means that they're flooding the board quickly. Now they're still a little ways away from War Master activation, and yeah, Allosaurus Shepherd just battles right through the Chalice, you know. So they just like that to build up a pretty big army, and decide like now like is as good a time as ever to like Toxic Deluge. Like, it does suck to lose Bowmasters, but they already have so many creatures out. So I'm going to crash him with the Orc Army, see if we can chip in some more damage, and just do an old-fashioned X equals 2 Toxic Deluge, and just clear the board. Now, once we draw some like fetch lands, we can start recurring Disinformation Campaign. We'll soon have Subtlety up, you know, so we have to see. Alright, another Allosaurus Shepherd, which has double uncounterable with Chalice and its own ability, so it is not getting countered. Though the thing is, Subtlety can tuck it back on top because it doesn't actually counter, so that'd be pretty funny. Alright, Llanowar Elves gets through the Chalice. I should just Subtlety right here, but I was like, okay, maybe I could make them think the coast is clear and I can ambush block the Shepherd. I do want Shepherd dead because it is a mana sink that can like be problem, you know, but the opponent sniffed it out. They did not attack into that priority pass that we had, so it would have been much better just to make them redraw the Llanowar Elves or shuffle it away. So I think that was a mistake by me, not just subtletying the elf. Bowmasters is absolutely massive though. Now they are creeping up on Shepherd mana, so I decide just to like hammer it right now with Bowmasters. It does suck to have to bolt that landing because we're like, our life total is falling pretty fast. And the opponent finds a Finale of Devastation, and I'm like, oh great, what are they gonna have here? And they grab and oh my goodness, is it Eldamri? I might be mispronouncing it or misremembering which elf, which is a big problem. Yeah, Eldamri. So it can basically like, you know, it's a creature engine all on its own. So I decided to crack the fetch here to get a Surveil. It's going to put 2 Disinformation Campaigns into our hand. A third one seems completely unnecessary at this point. Like, it does guarantee like a Commandeer, which we can steal like something nasty, you know, a Coco or a Natural Order from them just to deny them it. But decide just to play a Disinformation Campaign because drawing like another Bowmasters here would be like really sweet. So gonna crash them with Subtlety, but really scared now that they have Eldamri out. And there's a Leaf Crown Visionary, which boosts all their creatures. And then there's a Llanowar Elves. I forgot Eldamri is like static also. I think it's letting him just play Elves off the top, which is pretty bad. And no fear from the opponent. They're just drawing right into Bowmasters again. So I'm not gonna like mess around and leave their Lords out because our life total's falling. Just gonna take it down with the extra Bowmasters trigger. Alright, so the opponent is left with 1 card in hand. So I was about to slam Intimidation Campaign because they have a low life total, but I'm like, wait a second, like, I probably should hit them with Disinformation Campaign just to strip that last card out of hand, just to play it safe. But the thing is, the opponent now has an onboard pump effect with Boarmaster, and like, anyway, it's just getting a little dicey for us, and we only run 2 Toxic Deluge, so it's very unlikely we're going to be able to find the next one. So we end up using Intimidation Campaign anyway, just to see what we can find. Another Bowmasters would be sweet. A Grief isn't horrible. And then another fetch land means we can return the Disinformation Campaigns. So I'm going to keep crashing at Subtlety because we are like so close to closing this out. And to see how, because nasty can get, like, there's Collected Company, there's a whole lot of nasty spells they can draw right now. Alright, so they get a Priest of Titania off the top. Now I'll go ahead and link an Elves video of my own. It's from a little while ago, but you can see me tinkering with this kind of gameplay. And like, there's new toys since then, like this version of Eldamri, what didn't exist back then, I don't believe. So now I'm like really worried. Now they have Priest of Titania and Elvish Warmaster, which means they can like mount a massive attack on us. So like just tapping Priest of Titania can almost activate the Warmaster by itself. So I'm trying to figure out like, all right, let's figure out like if we can kill them this next turn. We have 3 guaranteed points coming through with Subtlety. And so here's what we have. So we have 7 mana and a Chrome Mox in hand. With 9 mana, if we able to play triple Intimidation Campaign, we can kill them with the Subtlety attack. Now the thing is, we need an untapped source in order to pull that off. The way it would work is we'd play Intimidation Campaign, play Chrome Mox tucking Commandeer, pitch cast Grief, return both Intimidation Campaigns, and if we drew an untapped land off the first one, we can slam the other 2 and it's game over. So that's what I'm going through the options right here, like trying to figure out what's going on. We have guaranteed 3 damage from Subtlety. So decide to lead with an Intimidation Campaign. So an untapped mana source right here does, like, gets us the kill. So, and we draw a tapped mana source. So I'm like, dang it. All right, so now I'm scrambling to try and figure out what to do. But then I'm like, I make the decision, like, oh, I can use Malakir Rebirth on Bowmasters to get that last point of damage, which will target them, return the campaigns, and then we can get the last point, you know. However, there's a problem with that plan, which you may have already seen. We have Chalice of the Void in play. So I cast it, and to my horror, it gets countered. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Because it would have been nice to have a couple blockers in play for all these giant elves, you know. So that was like a devastating misplay. So now I'm pivoting. I'm like, all right, what can I do? And it seems like the only play is just to play a Grief and hope that that blocker can win it. You know, we just need to survive one more turn. So Grief's going to return the Intimidation Campaigns to a hand. And we were so close to you know, an untapped mana source. We could have done the whole campaign trick last turn. So I'm pretty worried. All right, so they're just going to start going off right here. And it looks like instead of going for like the pump route, they're going to try and amass elves and like lords and stuff like that. Now they forgot they didn't have a shepherd in place, so they did lose an elf to Chalice, or maybe they just need to clear the top anyway. So here comes Coco. A couple lords is like a really bad news for us. All right, so it's one more Priest of Titania and one more lord, and so then the opponent executes their attacks. However, they are just short. If we block their biggest attacker, that's only it puts us down to 2, which means that Subtlety or double Intimidation Campaign wins. And so we managed to clutch that one out against Elves. So what a crazy battle that was. Alright, so we're playing against a Lurrus deck. And I'm trying to figure out, like, do we want turn 1 Psychic Frog, which might just eat like a Fatal Push, you know, it's not great. Or do we turn 1 Scam Grief into play? And if so, what do we pitch? And it seems pretty clear we pitch an Intimidation Campaign and hold on to the Psychic Frog, you know. So, going to lock up a blue-black source, just so we have an easier time casting the frog later on. Now, the thing is, doing this play means that essentially both of our Chrome Moxes are dead cards. And so, that is a risk of keeping any double Chrome Mox hand, unless you're like some ultra combo deck, like if you're sort of more on the mid-range side, like double Chrome Moxes is typically not what you want to see, unless you're trying to turn 1 Blood Moon or something like that. So the opponent actually has like a super stacked hand, and I think in my experience playing Scam, like this has Scam elements to it, you know. Energy is like a pretty tough matchup, unless you lean more mid-range and slam like Damnations and like Toxic Deluges and stuff, because they're just really resilient to targeted discard because all their cards are individually powerful and like very redundant, you know. So I end up taking both the removal spells because I'm hoping just to like get there with Grief plus Psychic Frog, but that means they have Guide of Souls and Ragavan, which are like equally, if not more so, strong than what we have out. So don't love the situation. And we like, you know, the Chrome Mox is not really helping right now, except as pitch fodder to Psychic Frog. So they're cruising in with Ragavan, and this is me hesitating, like, all right, like, we can block Grow the Frog to theoretically survive Ragavan. If they have a Galvanic Discharge or Bolt, then they can take down Frog. But they have a spare Ragavan, so like that's just like a free attack for them anyway. So Guide of Souls into Ragavan it is, and they're starting to build up energy. So we need something like excellent right here, because we're out of cards and they still have some action, not to mention Lurrus waiting on the wings. So I just had to crash in Psychic Frog, see if we can draw some action right here. And they don't have like any like really good blocks right here, but they are probably loath to give us a card. Alright, so there's a Malakir Rebirth, which is like some defense, you know, like we can block their Ragavan with our Grief and like return it with Malakir Rebirth. Amped Raptor is super annoying because that's a very powerful card, and First Strike is going to be annoying against our little blockers. And they managed to find an Ajani, so things are just spiraling. And this is the power of like energy decks, you know, like I said, every single card in their deck is individually powerful. So when you discard a couple of them, they usually don't care unless the stars align. So they're smashing in with Ragavan, and now because they got so much energy off that Amped Raptor play, we don't even have the option to block and trade with Ragavan anymore because it's going to the skies. So it's spiraling right now. Not to mention they're gonna draw off the top of our deck. They're gonna get a treasure. Like it's pretty rough right now. Now I could have cracked the fetch to try and like guarantee them like a lame card with Ragavan, but at this point it's Toxic Deluge or bust. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, they slam a Goblin Bombardment. So they're going to flip the Ajani right away with the Bombardment, targeting Psychic Frog with the initial damage. And they're going to, I think they could have just sent that at our face and then dealt 4 damage right here to the frog to take it down no matter what. Now we do have like a Malakir Rebirth, so we can save the frog here. You know, theoretically, because they can always shoot it down with Goblin Bombardment. You know, they would have to feed some creatures into it to do that. But decide just to like try and save it. And yeah, so they let Psychic Frog come back. They could have denied us that, you know, but I think it's in their best interest to make us lose the life and then kill the frog later on at their leisure, you know. So gonna surveil right here, hoping to find a Toxic Deluge. But even then, we're still going to lose quite handily to a Flip to Johnny and a Goblin Bombardment to keep the damage flowing, you know, so pretty tough. Alright, so one more chance to draw a Toxic Deluge is to send Psychic Frog to the sky. So I'm just going to activate its flying ability. And once again, you know, at any point they can just kill Psychic Frog by throwing some creatures at it with Goblin Bombardment. So now Frog's like Ophidian effect triggers on Planeswalkers and players. So I'm just going to take a damage off the Ajani. And like I said, even if I draw a Toxic Deluge here, it's still pretty bad. And we don't get there, so we're moving on to the next game. And so that's a way this deck can lose against like the strong energy draws. So love this triple Bowmasters hand though. That's pretty dang awesome. They are situational though, so we'll have to see how strong they are. Alright, and we're getting griefed from the opponent with an MDFC on the other side, so that plays into what they might be having. So as the opponent griefs us, let me know in the comments what's your favorite blue and or black enchantment, considering we're all about the campaigns in this deck. I personally really love the enchantment called Warped Devotion. Built a deck early on in my Magic career just for fun around that. So things escalated quickly. So the opponent griefed us and then got a Necrodominance out, which is actually way better to see on the other side of the battlefield when you're holding triple Bowmasters than a Necropotence, because Necropotence doesn't draw cards. It puts them to your hand from exile. So I'm just going to grief the opponent here, pitch casting a Bowmaster because I want to make sure I keep enough mana sources. So here's what they have. So what would you take in this case? I decide, you know, it's actually pretty strong to take Fel the Profane right here because they do have another MDFC, but it's tapped. Means they won't be able to cast anything except like a March next turn. And so they're going to be forced to just keep digging off the Necrodominance because they can't really do anything. And so they're going to pay some more life. They only draw 2 more cards. Like Necrodominance does reduce your hand size, so it is like weaker than Necropotence, you know. So all right, now we have 2 mana up, and the opponent knows we have double Bowmasters, you know. So they're going to do their best to keep up the Black March. So I decided to crack the fetch right here just to be prepared, and going to just lock up a blue source right here. We can Bowmasters, but my suspicion is that they're demonic tutoring for an MDFC, and so if we Bowmasters them, they're just going to bolt in a black MDFC, hit it with the huge March, have some more life to pay into Necrodominance, and then we're in trouble. So decide just to deny them that life gain burst and just to hold off, especially because it'd be nice to set up double Bowmasters. Alright, so they're down to 4, and I'm just checking out what they have. So Ironcrag Feet and some other stuff, and we draw a Malakir Rebirth, which is perfect. I'm like, oh, okay, so I bolt this land into play, we can bring back the Bowmasters when they kill it. And this is just like a misclick right here. I don't know why. I put it into play tapped. I'm just like, oh my gosh, because we needed that untapped to play Bowmasters and have Malakir Rebirth. So that was just an idiotic play. We could have had the scam Bowmasters play online, However, we're giving them another turn, which is pretty rough. Now they're falling really low in their life total. Okay, so now the land is untapped. So now we can execute the plan, but unfortunately let them amass a ton of mana, you know. So the thing is, they don't have a lot of cards to work with. So before they get the chance to activate Necrodominance, I'm going to Bowmasters them. And they're going to pour a ton of cards and mana into Black March right there. And I'm going to hammer our Bowmasters with Malakir Rebirth. So what's going to happen is they will gain some life. However, they will not be rid of Bowmasters. And so if they try and draw off Necrodominance right now, they're going to get absolutely annihilated by Bowmaster triggers. And they already know we have an extra one in hand. And so they are like massive trouble. And yeah, they've seen enough. So awesome win against a combo deck. Another double Chrome Mox hand, which, like I said, is sort of dangerous. I think one leak in my constructed gameplay is that I'm a little too eager to keep hands. I think that's the limited player mentality. Is like, oh, I see lands and spells, let's do this, you know, because you tend to want to be pretty reluctant to mulligan in limited, you know. So I think in constructed, you can stomach mulligans a lot better. In fact, some combo decks are quite good at it. So Chrome Mox into Ancient Tomb is pretty bad news into a show and tell, and we have like nothing good. So going to just slam a Boggart Trawler, and as the opponent puts an Emrakul the Aeon's Torn, which is a little bit of a power disparity right there, what they have versus what we have. Now the thing is, we actually have an answer. If we draw either a land or something tucked under Chrome Mox, we can deluge it away. So they crash in. Would have loved to get a free card off Psychic Frog, but the opponent just takes some damage. So them taking 1 damage means we are going to save 1 point of life on this absolutely crazy Toxic Deluge right here. So I bet the opponent didn't think they'd be getting their Emrakul removed right now, but it is happening. So we're going to deluge everything away. We're at 4 life. Emrakul gets reshuffled. We're in really bad shape. We need some like Disinformation campaigns to like shred their hand and draw some good stuff, you know. Now, it turns out it's going to get worse for us. So they draw and play a sneak attack, and we have a sink into Stupor. So I decide, you know, like, it's too dangerous to leave that in play. I'm just going to bounce it and maybe buy us some time, you know, like, so they're just going to replay the sneak attack. Like, maybe we can kill them with the Ancient Tomb fetch lands, you know, so that's something. However, it was too good to be true. So they replay sneak attack, and they have a spare Emrakul, which is going to annihilate us in more ways than one. And that's it. Well, that was pretty fun, and hopefully you enjoyed the sort of unique gameplay and style of this deck. I'm really glad it held up after this time, because Timeless has been evolving really quick with all the crazy cards you get on the bonus sheets, you know. So the major change I made is I was running like Fear of Infinity as like a really strong, you know, not strong, but really hard to deal with late game engine. But the thing is, like, as you could see, like, we don't need that. Like, we already have late game engine cards, and so even though Fear of Infinity can pitch to our elementals and Chrome Mox, it's just, we don't need it. And I think the deck's better off now without it. Drown the Lock is something I was very strongly considering. I was going to take out the Commandeers for it, potentially, because it gives us some, like, counterspell or creature destruction. Sort of works good in, like, against the mid-range and the combo decks. I could definitely see that going in there. Commandeer, it's as strong as it is. Like, we're way more black heavy in this deck than blue, and so you could see many of those hands just didn't have extra blue cards to feed into it, you know. So that's something to consider. Baleful Strix is just like a classic blue-black card you can possibly put in there, though you can't pitch it to Chrome Mox. You know, that's something to think about. Really thought hard about Collective Brutality. It's another card, sort of like Drown the Lock, that can play against it has some mileage against the combo decks and the mid-range decks. Not to mention, you can escalate it pretty easily by feeding a bunch of campaigns you bounce back into your hand, you know. So that is something to consider. I'm not playing Ancient Tomb or Strip Mine in this deck. Maybe that's a mistake. Maybe it needs some Strip Mines, but we're relatively color intense, and like, we're not really fighting the game on that axis. But maybe it should be there. The major thing coming down the line for this deck is the fact that in the Avatar set, we already have learned that in the bonus sheet we're getting the card Force of Negation, which is like going to be massive and Timeless. Like, it might even like completely disrupt the sort of combo heavy meta that we're seeing right now. this deck would be a really awesome Force of Negation deck. In fact, I would just ditch all the Commandeers for Force of Negations, possibly go all the way up to 4 of them, because we can always feed them into Subtlety or Chrome Mox or just use them. So I think this deck would be very strong, like really strong against combo decks once you have that. So pretty exciting deck to think about, and let me know what you think about it in the comments. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see even more nonsense, please consider subscribing. And if you already subscribed, thank you for your support. Your engagement with the channel helps me know what the people want. Thank you.